All right, what is going on, everyone, and welcome back to another special Black Desert video. My name is John, and today I have a topic that I thought would be interesting for all of you guys as well. How to grind efficiently and be productive while you're doing it. So I know there's a lot of new players coming into the game, which I think is very amazing. Hopefully you are all having fun with the game. And what brought up this topic was some of my friends just tried to start the game recently, and they were asking me for help, which I thought was all right. And so basically we got on a Discord call and they were screen sharing. So they were like, okay, so how do I do this? And I showed them like routes and stuff for grinding, and basically when I watched them do it, they were missing a lot of different things. So I thought this would be very helpful for everyone, and I thought that I'll share some of my tips with you all. So in no particular order, these are just some things that I thought were maybe some things that could be forgotten. And I'll leave timestamps in the description if you guys want to check that out as well. So number one, obviously the rotation of the grind spot. So first of all, this is how I would do it. I've made some videos in the past, and you look at the Marnie, or not the Marnie, Monster Zone info. And basically you just find a spot that is pretty decent within your area. You can sort by like AP and everything. So if you want to watch those, I'll try to leave some links in the description so you could see which spots I think are good for XP, silver, agris, and all that stuff. So yeah, if you want to check that, it's a separate video. And once you get to the grind spot, knowing good rotations and or finding ones that are good for you, because in every grind spot, or most of them anyway, everyone would consider like one spot a main. That's just the most popular. And then sometimes there are spots on the side of it, like, you know, top or bottom, wherever. And some people would consider that like less efficient. But realistically, it depends on what class you play, because some classes obviously do better in PvE than others. So like if you do the main one and you're not clearing as fast, the other spots might just be as efficient. So finding one that works for you is the number one thing. And finding one that like you won't overclear and extend into different spots, and you might have to, who knows, but generally for the most spots that I would recommend, you test out the Marnie realm, and then that usually gives you an idea of the main rotation for the most part, and then you could see like how it will go. And so even if you aren't in the Marnie realm, then it would work as, you know, basically there's no invisible barrier from point A to B. So just to give you an idea, if you don't know how to find a spot, try the Marnie realm for an hour, find a rotation that works, and then once your hour is up, spot's basically the same. So number two is using different kinds of buffs. And what I would recommend for grinding is the simple cron meal and or the exquisite cron meal. So the simple cron meal is more universally used for grinding because it gives extra damage to monsters, and it gives you more combat skill XP, as well as other bonus damage from monsters reduced by 6% and all that stuff. So universally, it is better to use the simple cron meal. I have seen times where it is better to use an exquisite, but you know, by that time it's very situational if you need more of a certain stat and everything. So it just depends on what you do. But for the most part, I think most people will just say simple cron meal is the way to go. And they're very cheap to get off the market, so it's not a big deal. Everyone can buy it. Just go to your central market, go to cron meal, and then there's literally tens of thousands. Just buy a few and you'll be okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is tent and villa buffs. So I have a video on how to get a free Old Moon tent, and there's like a permanent pay to win one and then a free one. So I'll leave a link in the description to another video of that as well, of how to get the free one, just in case you don't want to spend any money on it. But basically here's how it works. It functions for the most part the same way, just one is permanent and one isn't. So you set up your tent, and then there's a villa scroll option, right? And then you would buy your different buffs. So if you're grinding in a higher end spot, you probably want the more stats in general, because this is generally better. But if you're grinding in a lower end area where your risk of losing crystals is basically 0, then I guess combat and skill XP could always be better. And then the top one is for life skillers. So pick the one that you think is good for you. I would say the body enhancement one is just the universal better one for the most part. And then for everyone else, the shop over here, this is when people say tent buff, that means like the drop rate increase like 10% all the way to 50%. And I would say in most spots, generally buying it is worth it because it's 50 mil and you're probably going to make more than 50 in your grind hour. So it pays for itself for the most part, assuming you are doing things more or less efficiently. All right, so the next one we have is Elixirs versus Draughts and Draughts. So what I personally like doing is using the frenzies. Now, it also depends on what you're doing because sometimes you just straight up don't need it. So let's start off with the universal one, just because I think this is something that most people will use, and elixirs are more for endgame players and people who are trying to push like min-max high-end content. So for a beginner to intermediate level player, even endgame, honestly, it just depends on what you're doing. Just buy one of these Draughts. These are frenzies. And the reason why is because it gives a lot of extra AP against monsters. So if you're grinding, that just helps you clear faster and it gives you more stats. And if you aren't doing anything super like taxing where you just don't think you need it, a beast or a giant's draft are also very viable as well, because they also give extra AP against monsters, a little bit less, but it gives you more combat XP, whereas this one is just straight more damage. This one is a mix of damage and XP bonus, and giants are just more if you want certain stats that aren't given in the other one. So find the one that works for you. I think for the most part, frenzies are the way to go for most people, but just depends on where you're grinding. And so we have a thing called elixirs in this game. Now, we talk about this quite often, and it's kind of one of those endgame things where I think most people won't ever use. And I have a video of that as well, but like, if for the most part, you probably won't need it. So if you've ever done alchemy in this game, you know at endgame, using elixirs is considered one of the high tier stuff. It's very expensive to use. It's very time consuming to make the elixirs, and you don't actually use it very regularly unless you're like top of the line spots. So for the most part, just to give you a quick rundown of what I use, these are the ones I have for boss blitzing. And yeah, if you guys want to see that, I have a video of it as well, just talking about what I use for both PvP and PvE, and it's all good. So if you just want to, I'm just hovering over all of them. Just keep in mind, detections are very difficult to obtain, and getting truffles is a huge pain. So for the most part, everything else is pretty obtainable. And we also have like perfumes and stuff, which are kind of expensive to get in my opinion, but if you can get them, and perfumes versus Calx elixirs versus other things. So just keep in mind, you could stack perfumes with Draughts. You cannot stack different perfumes. So just keep in mind, read the tooltip before you just start spamming all the buttons. And if you have continuous care, you could set all this ready to go anyway. So it gives you like different tabs for Draughts and elixirs, perfumes, foods, and everything. But either way, that's also optional. The next thing we have is more of an endgame thing that I know that new players won't have. So there's a thing called a horse buff. Let me just show you this real quick. So if you look at your mount thing, if you get Krogdalo gear, if you have 5 pieces, it gives you an extra buff. So like for me, I have the wind set, which gives 5 AP for 1 hour to 10 allies. And the way you do it is basically do that. And then you saw the extra buff go on, so that's just an extra 5 AP, which is nice. So how do you get it? You go to Stonetail Ranch, invest in Stonetail Ranch Horse or House 3, and then you can see all the different horse gears. You can also buy it on the market sometimes if they sit, but it's kind of rare. So there's 3 different kinds of sets. The C one, which I actually have a full set of C as well. And there's a wind one, which is the AP. And then the earth one, I'm not exactly sure what earth actually does. But either way, let me actually go look at that. Okay, so yeah, you can just buy it. Sometimes they sit. So Earth is damage reduction and evasion for an hour. Wind is 5 AP, and Sea is HP and stamina. So I think for the most part, Wind is universally the best one, but then I can see that the other two have their uses as well. So depends what you do. I think the AP one is just overall the best one, but the way you can get him, let's go grind various places and get the where is it? These things, the Wind Spirit Stones, Earth, and Water ones, which you just get from grinding various spots. So pretty easy. Make it yourself. It's kind of a investment, but it is worth it just to have extra stuff. The next thing we want to talk about is church buffs. Every major city or town in this game will have some sort of church equivalent, and when you do that, you go to this NPC over here. Well, at least this is the one in Heidel. They offer different buffs for silver. So an attack buff, a defense buff, and experience buff. So obviously offensive, defensive, and experience for 2 hours or 5 hours. Pick the one you want, and they all stack as well. So if you could get all three, or you just get the certain ones you want. So that will help you grind a little bit faster and or more efficiently. Next thing we have is Alchemy Stones. Now, as a new player, you probably have something along the lines of this thing, right? The Spirit Stone you got from Seasons. I think this is good. It gives you more XP or AP against monsters, more XP, and attack and casting speed, which is always good. So at some point in the future, you're probably going to be looking into upgrading your Alchemy Stone. So when your Spirit Stone runs out, because that's not rechargeable, here's what I would do. If you are still in the beginner phase and you just don't know what to do, I would just honestly use these Spirit Stones. They're one-time use, and then you just grind them up into powder, and then those are used for recharging your Alchemy Stone in the future. So having one of these is better than not having one of these, and these are very disposable, so once you use up the durability, you just toss it, it's fine. So just get the one you need. I think the destruction one is probably for the best, and then once you get to the point where you starting to think about upgrading, what I would do is probably start looking into either a Sharp or a Vel's Heart. Obviously, Vel's Heart is a very expensive commitment, but it is worth it in the long run, and I think that's something to get. But Sharp is one of the ones that I used in the future or in the past, and I still think it's good if you can get it. I do think that Alchemy Stones are hard to get nowadays because it's one of those endgame items where people are basically buying these just to blow them up and hope to get the Splendid or the Shining. So getting them to use is kind of difficult. Whereas getting a Vel's Heart it's obtainable, but it still might take time. So just keep that in mind when you're planning your gear. But in the meantime, just using these, it's fine. It's not a big deal, and you'll be okay. The next thing we want to talk about is artifacts. Depending on what you use, there is no right or wrong answer in terms of what artifacts you use. I personally use the Death Blow set. It is considered one of the best in slots for PvE because it gives you monster damage and crit rate, so that's always nice. It is kind of expensive, and I don't think I would recommend it to beginners, but just find a combination that works for you. So other things that I've used is things like this. If you want just pure AP, you probably have the extra AP against monsters artifacts that are very easy to get. I think you even get one from the tutorial and the quest that just helps you unlock it. So you probably have one already, and then you just buy a combination of random Lightstones that work for you as a beginner. And then once you start thinking about like better options, obviously you would just go to your Lightstone tab and then find like different stats that you think would work for you. There's also a Google sheet somewhere or a Google Doc. You just Google it and it gives you the list of all the combinations, and just find something for you, whether you're an offensive player or you're a defensive player or a life skiller. There's a lot of combinations. There's no right or wrong answer, but yeah. Blades are, they're obtainable, but they're kind of expensive, so I don't think it's a new player set. The Strike Crystal is obviously very good, but it's hard to get. And then everything else is just whenever you get it. Like some things might be good, some things might be less good. And then finally, getting the fairy. Obviously, we have a video of it ourselves on the best skills to get for a fairy and how to obtain one. So that's actually a very recent video. If you want to check the channel, it's probably in one of the recent ones, where having an auto or your fairy auto pot for you, even if you don't have infinite potions, that's fine. Just not having to press that extra button to potion every time is always nice. And then if you have continuous care, obviously it resets all your buffs when they run out. So it's basically no downtime until you turn it on and off. So we talked about our fairy and the best skills to get, which ones should you get. And so that's something I think is worth talking about as well. So if any of those caught your attention and you want to learn more about any specific topic, I'll leave some links in the description to videos that I've made previously for like food buffs, all the best grind spots in my opinions, best elixir setup, artifacts and fairies. So I think those are all pretty interesting. Hopefully you guys learned something as well. And if you have any questions or anything, feel free to hit me up, drop a comment, and or join the Discord, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. So hopefully that helped you. And just as a very quick conclusion, using buffs is generally worth it. It helps you grind faster, and you probably make your silver back in the hour. I understand that if you calculate it and you're like, oh, 50 mil for a tent buff plus like another 15 for church buffs, and then all these, like, you know, all these other things like food and cost. Just trust me when I say you'll make the silver back, because you're grinding more efficiently. That means you're going faster, you're making more silver. And I've grinded pretty much every spot in the game, and for the most part, you can profit from every single one of them. Otherwise, people wouldn't be doing it. So I think overall, it should help you. You'll make money, and you'll do fine. So that's all I wanted to talk about today. Thanks so much for watching. I wanted to say that before I head out, if you are new to the channel, I would love to see you guys come back. Hit that subscribe button. I make videos every day for people who are looking to get better, new players, returning players. And we have about another 2 weeks left on our code. So if you are thinking about buying pearls or trying out the game in general, use my code on screen, code Jonlaw. It's not case sensitive. So if you're thinking about buying any pearls, A coins, and all that stuff, use my code. I get a small portion of it, and I'd really appreciate it. So that's all I wanted to talk about today. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.